today I'm going to be making a cake from my cakes page, our cakes by Lenie, and it's this one. Just one of the simple ones, but really nice, elegant. I love the design, it's one of my favourites. So before I get started, just want a quick wash hands, obviously wipe the table and the surfaces down, make sure everything's clean. You might want to put a lovely apron on as well. Can I just say Lucy Abley made this. This is my secret Santa. How mint is it? I know it's Christmassy, but I just thought I had to. Actually, I just realised it was reversible, so I'm now out of Christmas mode. Let's start baking. You also want to be preheating your oven to about 180, 200 degrees just before you start, so that it's nice and warm in time. So I'm going to put the ingredients you're going to need and the equipment as well in the description below, so you can have a quick look and see if you need to get anything before you start making. So I'm going to start with the sugar. I'm going to whack this in the mixing bowl. And then you want to melt this in the microwave first, or if you need to on a pan, but microwave is quicker. So you don't want it fully melted, so if you chop it up into bits and then put it in the microwave rather than all one big bit so it doesn't fully melt, you just want it to be soft to the touch. So literally about 10-20 seconds in the microwave depending how hard it was to start off with. So once the butter is melted, we're going to put it in with the sugar, so there's only the butter and sugar in here, and we're going to whisk this up until it's light and fluffy. So if you have one of these you don't need to do anything, but if not you're going to be needing to whisk quite hard with your hands. So next we're going to be adding the eggs in. You're going to add them in gradually and mix after every one. So once you've finished whisking the eggs in, it should look like it's curdling a little bit and it'll be like quite a runny consistency. So now it's time for the flour. Remember, self-raising or plain flour and some baking powder. Next we're going to be adding the cocoa powder. So if you weigh that as well and then add it in. And if you don't like chocolate sponge and you prefer it to be like just vanilla, so instead of adding cocoa powder in, add an extra 70 grams of flour, so 340 grams of flour instead of the 270, and then some vanilla extract, and then you can get vanilla instead of the chocolate, but chocolate is very popular. So this is what our finished mix looks like. So this is after adding the flour and the cocoa powder and whisking it all up. In the meantime, so I've just greased these 3 tins. So this is enough for 3 layers. The shops didn't have any baking paper left, so unfortunately I haven't got any, but normally I'd cut out a circle of baking paper and pop it in there and then grease over the top a tiny bit. But instead we've just greased the tins a little bit more. So what you want to do is just drop a bit of sunflower oil into them and then get a piece of kitchen roll and just like put it all the way around so that it covers up the sides as well, because it will rise up the sides. So you want to get your spatula and go all the way at the bottom just to make sure it's thoroughly mixed and there's no chunks of flour or anything left at the end. And then that's us finished with the cake mixture. So we're going to get it and scoop it out evenly into these 3 tins. Once you've scooped your mixture out into the 3 tins, you're going to spread it round so that it goes all the way around the outside, touching the edges as well, so that it's nice and flat. However, when these go in the oven, they're going to rise, so we don't want the middle to have a big lump bump in and be higher than the rest. So what we're going to do is put a little hole in the middle so you can almost see the bottom as well there. And then that means that having that dip in the middle, when it cooks, that is going to even out, so we're going to get a nice flat cake. Once you've done the same for all 3, it's time to pop them in the oven. So we're going to put them in for 20 minutes at first and then check them to see how they're doing. So when you look at them in the oven and think they're done, when they've risen and they look nice and cooked, you're going to take a cocktail stick and stick it in. And if it comes out clean, then that means they are done. So we're just going to leave them to cool first before decorating. So now for the second part, we're decorating the cakes. So this is how they came out, look nice and they're quite flat. because we put the hole in them before, so it makes it easier to stack them up and you don't have to mess on trying to cut them to make them even or anything like that. So we're going to start off by making the butter icing. So basically you're going to need a full pack of butter, so 250 grams of butter. I normally just use Tesco's own butter actually, just got Lurpak because it's the only thing we could find, but that'll do. And then you need 500 grams of icing sugar and 100 grams of dark or milk chocolate. If you have dark chocolate, it'll obviously make it just richer. And then we need some cocoa powder as well to make the icing a bit stronger. So again, like with the other butter, we put it in the microwave and melt it so that it's just nice and soft. This one especially, you really don't want it to melt because we're going to have to whisk up and we want to get the butter icing consistency. So you really don't want it melted. It'd rather be hard and whisking it for longer than it be fully melted. So once you've got it melted, we're going to whisk it up just on its own first of all until it's light and fluffy again. So as you can see, it's got lighter in colour as well, and that just shows that you've incorporated enough air by whisking it. So it's nearly ready here. I'm just going to do it for about 30 more seconds. So for the icing sugar, this is 500 grams, so I'm going to be using the full thing because you want double the amount of icing sugar as you have butter. So what you need to make sure you do, key, is using a sieve. So if you don't have one, you're really going to need to make sure you mix it and get all the lumps out, so the sieve is really quite good if you have one. So basically we're just going to sieve the icing sugar into the bowl where the butter is. You will get loads of dust, like icing sugar dust like I've got here. So that's why you only want to do about half and then mix it up and then add the other half. And it should become quite thick. So we've mixed half the icing in now, and we're just going to put the second half in and whisk it up now again. So I've just broken the chocolate up into bits while it was in the pack, so I didn't even have to touch it. I'm just going to pop it into this bowl, the whole pack, so that's 100 grams. And then this is the bowl that I used with the butter, so there's a little bit of butter left in, which is perfect because you need a bit of butter for melting it. So I'm just going to stick this in the microwave for 30 seconds, check it and pop it back in for another 30 until it's melted. But you don't want it to burn, so make sure when it's nearly all melted you're not putting it back in and you're just mixing it to melt the last little bits. So I've got the melted chocolate here, and once you've finished whisking in all the icing sugar, the butter, we're going to add the chocolate to the icing to make chocolate icing. So we're going to whisk that up as well. And then it's up to your own personal preference how dark and chocolatey you want the icing. So you're going to add some cocoa powder accordingly. So if you want it more chocolatey, you obviously add more cocoa powder. So there's no measurement for this, you just need to judge what you want your icing like. But it is also good to use a sieve for the cocoa powder because it will create lumps if not. So there you can see now it's looking nice and dark. However, it is really thick. It's a bit too thick. So what we're going to do is we're going to add some milk. And you just have to do this by eye really. You're just going to add a little drop in at a time and mix it up until it's nice and smooth because we want to be able to spread it and pipe it. So it needs to be a lot smoother than this. This is due to the amount of cocoa powder that I've added in. So if you add less cocoa powder in or no cocoa powder in, you might not even need the milk at all. So this is the consistency we want, nice and smooth. I've added about 2 tablespoons of milk in altogether, but it will be different depending on how much cocoa you used. So we've got the cakes here. If you're done with the icing, put it to one side, and what you need to do is get a knife and go all the way around the cake tin. This is to loosen the cake so that you can get it out without breaking it, hopefully, because that would be slightly sad. So you're going to do that and then you should be able to feel it. If you push on the bottom as well, you should be able to feel it wiggling. So what we're going to do is we're going to do that to get all 3 of them out of the tins, ready to layer up on the cake. So here I've got all 3 of the layers out of the tins. obviously when you flip them out, say on this tin foil, then you're going to need to pick them up and flip them back round. And what you want to do before we start layering them up is, it might sound a bit weird, but like basically you want to go around and like stroke them stroke them from the outside, because if there's crumbly bits like this, say this has just fallen off when I stroked it, and they're just going to get stuck in the icing, and you want all the crumbs to be off, so you don't want to be able to see any crumbs when you've added the icing. So if you do this quickly round the edges, it'll get rid of any of the straggly bits and make it a lot easier to ice. So if you have a palette knife, one of these, this is really good to use right now. So what you want to do to start off with is grab a bit of icing from your bowl. I've just got my icing bowl here, and you're just going to put a little blob in the middle of your board. So what I've got here, I've got a cake board. You can get these for literally like 99p in B&M bargains and places like that, Tesco's, anywhere. If you don't have one of these, obviously just doing it on a plate or any sort of tray is fine. But we're just doing a blob of icing so that the cake will stick and it won't slide when you try and decorate it. And I've also got one of these turning tables to put my cake on while I'm decorating. You don't have to have one of these, it does help as well. And I think this was £4 from Wilko, but it's obviously really not necessary. So if you put your board on there and you've got your blob of icing, you're going to lift up your first cake carefully, 2 hands always, and place it on right in the middle. So you want to make sure you've got it in the middle of the board because you don't want it to be a bit dodgy. We're going to take some more icing on your palette knife like this. If you don't have one of these, literally just a big spoon is fine. And what we're going to do is we're going to put it on here. So you want a healthy amount, and once you've got it in the middle, what you're going to do is just spread it on like this. Feel free to always grab some more, because it's better to remake some icing if you need it, rather than being rash, because otherwise the cake might be lacking icing in between the layers. Who doesn't love some icing? So once you've put it on, be fully covering it, and you want to be going down the sides a little bit as well. So starting to encase the crumbs already, like that. So once you've got it covered, so like I've got this covered, we're ready to add the next layer on, and we're going to repeat. So here I've just added the final layer. What I'm going to say is you'd probably want to put the flattest layer on the top so that you get a nice even surface to decorate on the top. And next we get a piece of tin foil. You can just use the bits that you've already been using, and you're going to pop it on the top so that you can get a good grip without actually having your hands on the cake. Add the first layer, a really thin one but covering everywhere. And it doesn't matter about the crumbs this much on this one, because we're going to cover it so it's all like this, just a really thin layer, and then we're going to put it in the fridge. I'm going to take this, it's a scraper. You could even just use like anything flat plastic you've got, or the back of a knife or anything, but be careful obviously if you're going to be using a knife. You're just going to take it and just go around quickly. This bit is like no precision whatsoever. Just going to go around and scrape the excess off, because we only need a thin coat. So what we've done now is called the crumb coat, and it's basically so that the crumbs set in, and we're going to put it in the fridge for about 20 minutes. This icing will harden a little bit, so the crumbs will stay underneath. So when you're doing your final layer, you won't be able to see any crumbs. And then when you've laid it on the top, you're going to just pull it up over the sides, because that's also where a lot of crumbs like to stay, in the corners here. So you want the cake basically fully covered in a thin layer. So before you pop it in the fridge, you'll notice that there'll be icing on the board or on the plate, and you don't want that to be there when you're finishing, when you're serving. So you don't want that to go in the fridge and harden. So just take a clean piece of kitchen roll, and what you're going to do is just scrape it all off. Hi, so I've just got this cake out of the fridge, and if you felt it, you'd be able to see that it's like a bit harder, it does not need to be rock solid. Crumbs are nicely sealed in, so we can start doing the actual layer of icing. You're not going to need that much icing since it's all covered, but you just want to add, with your palette knife or your spoon, you just want to add a small thin layer of new icing all the way around. So you want to make sure that you get the top as well, you get the top a bit more smoothened out, like this, because you'll often tend to miss the top, either the top or the bottom, so you want to make sure that you're doing both of them as well as the middle. And then when you've got it like this, nicely sort of roughly smooth, obviously it's not smooth, but like you've got it covered in the new layer of icing. What you want to do is, we're going to need to clean this, your scraper or whatever you're using to scrape. So you want to fully clean it, and also we want to heat it up. Obviously, don't put this in the microwave because it'll blow up. But what you want to do is just boil the kettle, and we're going to pour some hot water over the metal parts. I'm just using a clean tea towel to dry it off fully, but it is still warm if I touch it. I'm going to grab it, and basically you need to take a hold. If you've got a cake board, this makes it a bit easier. If not, it doesn't matter. But if you've got a cake board, grab a hold from as far around as you can. And you're going to start here, and normally in 2 goes you can go around. If you're extra skilled, you might be able to go around in 1, but the least possible, so that we don't leave marks in the cake. So I'm just starting to go around gently, just pull the cake board round if you have one, and you're not really actually moving the scraper, so it's more the board that you're moving. Whereas if you don't have a cake board or a spinner, it's more the other way around you're going to be doing. So I've only done 1 layer there, and you can already see it's already smoother. But then next time I'm going to need to focus on the top. But here I can see there's a little dent, so I'm going to need to add a little bit more icing at the top here, just to fill it in so that it can be nice and complete. And then I'm going to do the exact same again. If it's starting to cool off a bit, you might want to heat it up again, because it just melts the butter slightly, so you'll get a smoother finish. You never want to apply too much pressure, because otherwise it'll take a too thick layer of icing off. So obviously you can keep going until it's even more perfect, but it's up to you, whenever you get sick of it, or depending on how long you have. But next we're just going to smooth, so it's done around the edges, but we just need to smooth from the edges to the top, so that you get a flat top. So now that we've got the whole cake and the top quite smooth, the top doesn't matter too much about looking smooth. It's just it needs to be quite flat so that the chocolate goes on nicely, but it's going to be covered in chocolate anyway, so it doesn't matter too much how it looks. We're just going to see where I've dropped bits of icing. We're going to go around with a fresh piece of kitchen roll and just wipe this side. We're going to move on to decorating now, my favourite part. So I've now got the cake back out, and it's ready to start decorating. So first things first, we want 100 grams of chocolate, milk chocolate, and we're going to put it in a bowl and melt it in the microwave. So same as last time, you don't want it in there for too long because you don't want it to burn. You just want a really runny consistency, because this is going to be for the drip. So while the chocolate's in the microwave, you can get your icing ready to pipe. So if you have a piping bag, this is the one I have, you can get like disposable ones from Whole Bargains for about 99p, and then the tips for that as well, if you're not going to use it much. This is the tip I've got, and that's just going to create nice circle flowers for us to go on the top. It's just like a standard tip. You're going to drop it in and fold it over the glass, and then as you can see here, it's literally just in the glass, and that's just holding it up, and it's opening this nicely for us to put the icing in. So that you don't get icing all over. So you want to get your icing that you made earlier that's left over and give it a quick mix if it's been sat there for a while. And what you're going to do is take it and just put a few spoons of that in. You might as well put more in so that you don't have to keep opening it up, but if it's hot or anything, you don't want it to be melting, and if you're handling it for quite a while it would also get warm and melt a bit, so yeah, so don't put too much in, but you don't want to be filling it up all the time either. And then see if you lift it up, you haven't got any round all the sides, it's just perfectly in the middle. Push it down. If you do it gently and try and get the air bubbles out, because you don't want air bubbles, else it is going to ruin your piping. And then this is ready for piping later, so we're just going to put that back in the glass and leave it there out of the sun. Chocolate out the microwave. There's different ways of doing the drip. If you want more of a neat drip look, what I recommend you doing is doing the drips down the side like this. Just not even doing the top, just dripping them down the side. And then you can literally control like sort of how far you want the drip to go and things like that, and they'll all look quite uniform and really nice. And this is how I normally do it because it gives you more precision. What you could also do is literally just pour the chocolate over the top and spread it out and just push it down the edges. How you're just going to keep going round. If there's any bits that you missed up on the icing, for example, where you finished it here, I'm going to make a drip go down here, which is going to cover that up because I didn't really have time to flatten that out properly. So once you've went all the way around like this with your drips, take all the chocolate that's left and you're going to pour it on top. But you need to be quite careful, you don't want to be pouring too much on because it might overflow and ruin your drips. I'm going to use my pallet knife again and I'm just going to go around and spread the chocolate carefully so that it meets the edges where I've started the drips. The next step is icing. So what we're going to do for this one is we need some florets on the top here. And I'm going to aim to do 5. 2 of them here. I'm going to do the third one right here. So I'm going to put it down where I want the middle. Remember, leave enough space around the outside to do the actual flower. Press down and then pull it round. And go around 2 or 3 times depending on how big you want it. And when you want to stop moving, press, squeeze and pull up like that. And I'm going to fit 2 more on here. Just doing the exact same movement. So as you can see here, I haven't got it fully even, and it's not easy to guess how big you're going to get it round. So what you can do is you can either do like a little mini one, or it'll get filled in with decoration later anyways, so it doesn't matter too much. But I like the mini ones, so I like to do a couple of mini ones in between the big ones as well. Here for this design I've got 2 of the strawberries. So you want to get your melted chocolate and you're just going to do some drizzles. Wait till the big bit drops and then drizzle it if you want it on thinly. So I've got some golden glitter. I'm not sure if it's from Tesco or Wilko, I can't remember, but this is optional. But you're just going to take it and spray one of the strawberries totally in gold. Just makes it look nice and pretty and gives a nice effect to the cake. I'm going to place this in the centre of the cake, and then I've got the 2 chocolate ones which I'm going to just place on the side right next to them. This decoration is just up to you really, I'm just showing you how I like to do it. So we've got 3 lovely strawberries there. Next what you want to do is get the 4th one and we're going to slice it in half, and it's forming a nice little semicircle there, as you can see. Make sure once you've washed them you leave them to dry a little bit because you don't want them wet, else it's going to seep onto the icing and make it run. So sorry about that, I've realised the lighting was terrible with the sunlight and the shadows, so I've moved out of it altogether. And now you can see the gold and the strawberries as well. It's just the arrangement you fancy really. But you still want the icing to be slightly damp when you're doing this so that everything will stick on. So I've got minstrels and I've got the piping bag I had earlier. And here basically you're just going to have fun and stick some minstrels on wherever you fancy and stick them on. If there's anywhere that's gone a bit wrong or that you've ruined as well, you want to cover that up. So before we continue along the side, same again, clean kitchen roll, and we're just going to wipe all that off. I'm going to change tips. So I had this tip on before. What I'm going to do is just remove this. I'm going to add this tip instead. This one is more of like a fat one, and you'll see what effect it gives. I quite like this one to decorate and add on the top. So I'm going to start off. This is just a bit random as well. When you get to this point, you just need to be judging by eye, deciding where you want extra things, and I'm sure it'll look marvellous whatever you do. So as you can see, this is what it looks like using this tip. So here we go, here is the finished cake, and this is what it looks like. So that's how you make that cake. And obviously if you've got the bases, you can change it up a bit, switch up the decoration. Also what I like to do sometimes is spray, if you have the gold, spray that over the top as well, it gives it a nice finish. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed. Feel free to DM me on Instagram to ask me any questions, and I also want to be tagged in any beautiful bakes that you all make. Sorry about the terrible quality of the video and everything. I'm clearly not pro at all the technical stuff, but well done if you made it this far, and thanks for watching.